Since its inception in 1993, the UFC has come a long way. What used to be a lawless exhibition pitting different martial arts against one another has grown into one of the most professional fighting organizations in the world. But what advantage does the UFC have over its competition? And how does its business model attract the best MMA fighters? Stay tuned as we break down why the UFC is way bigger than fighting. First up, history. One of the UFC's most powerful parts of advertisement is its own history. The organization was founded as the Ultimate Fighting Championship in the early 1990s as a kind of real-life video game. Kickboxers and karate fighters were put up against sumo wrestlers and Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belts. The tagline of the competition was, "There are no rules." But when authorities and legislators started making laws against the UFC, the organization had to start using tighter rules. In the early 2000s, fighters like Ken Shamrock and Tito Ortiz helped to build the UFC into a well-known sport. One other thing that was the key to their success was their own reality TV show, The Ultimate Fighter, which is used to find new fighters and promote the competition. Since then, interest in the UFC has exploded. Stars who have come out of the show include Matt Serra, Michael Bisping, Nate Diaz, Tony Ferguson, and TJ Dillashaw. You can watch the sport from more than 190 countries, and fighters have come from far and wide. There are currently Australian, French, Brazilian, and American champions. It has become a global sport and the most respected organization in MMA. The UFC was bought in 2001 by the Ferretta brothers for $2 million. That may have seemed like a lot back then, but their investment has definitely paid off. Today, the value of the UFC is estimated to be around $10 billion. The biggest fights sell more than 1 million pay-per-view buys, making them more profitable than many of the biggest boxing matches. Under Dana White's leadership, the UFC has created some of the biggest names in MMA history, and for any young fighter looking to make a living, the UFC is the end goal. Now, skill. One of the most exciting things about the UFC is that there is not just one skill that fighters use. For boxing, the attacks that can be thrown are pretty limited, but in the UFC, every fighter needs to be well-rounded. Knockouts can come from flying knees, punches, spinning kicks, and everything in between. But as the sport has evolved, fighters have come to depend on a few set of skills. While striking and movement are important, all modern fighters have to know either wrestling, grappling, or jiu-jitsu. Without a good ground game, fighters will submit or use all their energy to try to escape. One of the best wrestlers in UFC history is Khabib Nurmagomedov. Out of his 29 professional MMA wins, 11 of those came via submission. But even Khabib didn't always rely on his wrestling skills. In his highly anticipated fight against Conor McGregor, Khabib outstruck the Irishman, who is notorious for his punching power. All the UFC fighters have a wide range of skills. That means that each fight is exciting and can end in unexpected ways. Knockouts, takedowns, and submissions can happen at any time. When Jorge Masvidal faced veteran wrestler Ben Askren, a flying knee ended the fight in just 5 seconds. This is why many young fans prefer UFC to boxing, because it provides a level of excitement where nobody knows what's going to happen next. Coming up, why is the UFC the most competitive MMA league in the world? And how did a loyal fan base make the UFC into a multi-billion-dollar company? Next, real competition. In the world of boxing, the job of promoters is to pick the right fights for their clients. That means making sure that their undefeated records continue. In the UFC, there are still negotiations, but the ranking system makes it harder to avoid the competition. If a fighter wants a title shot, they normally have to work their way through the best of the best. Just look at the path of the featherweight champion Alexander Volkanovski. He was on a 10-fight win streak when he joined the UFC in 2016, but it wasn't until 5 more wins that he was put up against Chad Mendes. After stopping Mendes in the second round, Volkanovski beat featherweight legend Jose Aldo and was then given a shot at title holder Max Holloway. This is why Volkanovski has been urged to move up to lightweight, because he has already proved himself as one of the best featherweights of all time. At least, that's what UFC legend Daniel Cormier thinks. He said, "You gotta go up." It feels like now he'll be feasting on the featherweights like Amanda Nunes was feasting on the bantamweights every time she went down. UFC president Dana White has come under fire for not paying his fighters big salaries, but he has explained why it's so different from boxing business model. Dana said that boxers were overpaid because each fight was like a going out of business sale. He said, "You can build a league like that. You can't build a sport. You can't have 750 fighters under contract with that kind of mentality." This is the model that has made the UFC such a tough competition for fighters, but it means that when you're a champion, you deserve it. What's any competition without the fans? And help generate hype for events. At the UFC, fans are young and committed. During the pandemic, it was one of the only sports that continued to do well. Even when put up against major boxing matches and basketball at the same time, the UFC averaged more than 800,000 viewers and peaked at 1.2 million. And Dana White thinks that is even more impressive than traditional sports. He said, "Those sports they had all their big stars on. If you watch the Lakers, well, you'll see LeBron. But our preliminaries are our lesser-known fighters. We're going against them not with our biggest names, but with the fighters we're trying to develop and provide exposure for." This is a big part of the business model and why fans like to keep with lower-ranked fights, too. New stars can emerge at any time, and having them all in one place makes it easier to keep track of. When Conor McGregor burst into the UFC in 2013 by knocking out Marcus Brimage, fans immediately paid attention. From there, McGregor's charisma and personality attracted many new fans to the sport and built him into a global superstar. To this day, McGregor holds all top 5 spots for the most pay-per-view buys in UFC history. That's why most of McGregor's demands are met by the UFC. McGregor has only won 1 fight in 4 years, but even when he demanded to fight welterweight champion Kamaru Usman, the president didn't refuse. White White said, "It's interesting. We'll see what's next. Any Conor fight is good money-wise." Now the hype. When was the last time a boxing match dominated the news? You might hear about Tyson Fury retaining his heavyweight title, but the build-up to each fight is only really followed by boxing fans. But the UFC is much bigger than that. When there's a big fight, it's everywhere. When Conor McGregor fought Khabib Nurmagomedov back in 2018, it was the biggest audience that the UFC ever recorded, and that was because of the crazy promotion in the months leading up to the fight. There were plenty of words exchanged between the two, with McGregor insulting Khabib's religion, his country, and his family. The rivalry reached a new level when McGregor and his team attacked a bus that Khabib was sitting in. They smashed windows by throwing dollies and bins at the bus before running off. There were rumors that it wasn't a publicity stunt, but that wasn't the case. Afterwards, McGregor was charged with assault and criminal mischief and eventually ordered to perform 5 days of community service. It may have led to a legal nightmare for the UFC, but it was a great promotion for the event. And even after Khabib and McGregor finished fighting, the beef wasn't finished. When Khabib submitted McGregor, he jumped out of the cage and tried to attack McGregor's training mate Dylan Danis. Then another fight broke out and inside the octagon between the teams. That's why Dana White has tried to convince Khabib to have a rematch with McGregor, but the Russian has confirmed that he is happy in retirement. He was even offered $100 million for a crossover fight with boxing superstar Floyd Mayweather, just like Conor McGregor did in 2017, but he refused. Do you think that the UFC can continue to grow in the years to come, or does it depend on its biggest stars? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.